I wonder if you realize that life is experienced in seasons. And do you know what season you're in? I'm not talking about the weather outside. I'm talking about the season or the weather of your life, the season of your life. Because if you can't identify the season of your own life that you're in right now, it'll be hard to respond to it. But when you do know and you lean into it, you'll gain traction. You'll be productive without question. But more than being productive, you will begin to experience what it is to walk in the benefits of being rooted in that season. Not just knowing it exists and not just knowing that you're in it, but really rooting yourself and settling into it. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Stephen, and this is the Take Care and Live podcast. And this podcast helps folks like you and me build real momentum for our everyday life. And here we just don't survive conflict, we convert it. Every episode gives you practical tools to turn your hardest experiences into capital, into wisdom, into resilience, into influence that will compound over time. And if that's the kind of momentum you're after, then hit subscribe, because this next step begins with your next listen. For everything, there's a season. And I've entered an unprecedented season in my own life where, if I were to be honest, work is just work. It's valuable. It's not a source of validation like I used to allow it to be. Work is necessary, but it's not my top priority. And for someone like me who is in a business that is tied to results and success being determined or connected to the results you create or that is created or produced from your work. And in a culture that we're all in that is constantly telling us we're not doing enough, I know this perspective isn't popular. But I also know that to deny it, to deny those feelings that they exist within me would be disingenuous, that it would actually also be anti-human. Because the reality is, and scripture tells us, that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under the sun. Meaning you will have cycles in life where some things are more important than others. Apples are not at their prime throughout the entire course of the year. The best time for strawberries is May, not the heat of summer. There's a season where you will be at your prime and experience one thing to a greater degree than another. None of us experience an ever-ending or never-ending overflow of high productivity or enjoyment in one domain of life all the time. Whether it's work, whether it's marriage, whether it's parenting, whether it's our social lives. And we have to give ourselves the room and the permission and the space to have those human emotions and reconcile with that reality that there will be seasons of time where each of those domains in our life will not look and feel the way that we want them to. In fact, I'm learning when I resist what I call the slowdown, when you persist in the resistance that's pulling you away from being hyper focused on results or over obsessed over a pre-planned agenda or plan of action, that your effectiveness actually declines, and your attitude and disposition becomes a whole lot more negative because you're pushing against what it is the particular season in your life for that period of time is expecting of you. And that persistent resistance is not always a sign that you should push forward or harder. It's not a sign that you lack tenacity or that you lack ambition. Quite frankly, it's just a sign that you need to submit to the season you're in. And oftentimes, when we resist that season, we resist the change in environment, the change in emotions, the change in the flow, when we resist the change of expectation, when we resist the change of the kinds of demands, when we resist the change in the shift of our values, we could also be resisting the move of God to reorient our preferences and our patterns to new rhythms and a new focus that we need to hold to a greater level of esteem, or that we need to give greater reverence to than we did during other points in time in our life. Earlier this week, Monday to be precise, I was starting my day off as usual. Uh, Went to the gym, got ready for work, had my momentum list on deck, ready to start the day, jump into some scheduled meetings. However, my little one was not seeing my interest as holding any value whatsoever. He was not settling down enough for me to even think. And I struggled to make it through those meetings. Daddy hat on full swing, just as much as my professional hat was on. But if I were to be honest, I don't know that I wanted him to settle down at all. My outward response was resisting what he was needing, but internally, I wanted exactly what was happening. I wanted to give the time and energy to his direction in a different way than I would typically during that time of day. And so rather than resist it, I allowed my day to be derailed. I took the L. I embraced it. I needed him to be him, and I needed to hear and support his interests at that moment. And I remember saying, okay, if this is what needs to be for this day, then I receive it. And I literally opened my hands and said, Lord, I receive what you have for me today. That's simple. And after I said that, I closed my laptop and then I used my smartphone to cancel one meeting and uninvite myself from another so that I can be what I needed to be, what the environment around me, what the voices around me were calling for. And that was to be responsible and attentive to parenting my home. And so after taking the L for the day, I allowed myself to settle in to the season that I was in. The season isn't just a day, but seasons typically last for several months, could last a year from a human perspective. But the seasons of weather, they last several months because in each season, there's something new happening. In wintertime, we're not seeing green leaves as we would in the spring and in the summer. The environment is replenishing, it's recycling, it's getting rid of the old weight of the prior year. Those dead leaves and those barren trees are representing its preparation for something new that's going to come in the springtime and in the summer. And in the process of that experience, the tree has to shed its old story, its old leaves. The grass has to wither. It can't flourish like it did during the spring and the summer and even the fall. It has to take a little bit of a trampling by the snow and heavy rains and the ice because the season calls for it. And every season brings with it its beauty and its frustration. Its beauty and its ugliness. Its cold, freezing temperatures and its warm, soothing feelings. Every season brings its own form of that. And knowing the season you're in and embracing it allows you to know how to flourish in it, to dress for it, to operate in it. And as I drove my son to the park in the middle of that day and came to a stop at a traffic light, that's in that one quick moment of stillness, I sensed a prompting to open my hands again. And as I did, I had them open like this. And I can hear a voice say, open them wider. And as I did that, I heard the voice say to me, everything I'm pouring into your hands, I want you to allow it to get poured into other people's hands. And for me in this season, I'm being taught that it's not about me capturing something for myself, but opening my hands even wider so that what I get to have and what comes to me, I can utilize to benefit people around me. And hearing that for some reason liberated me like I hadn't felt before. I know that blessings in time and in focus and in effectiveness and in peace of mind don't come from trying to hold on to every minute or keep every intended agenda item or attend every meeting. I know this. I know this here mentally. But sometimes my behavior doesn't honor what I know to be true. I know that some blessings, and I'm discovering more that some blessings come from opening your hand widely, from resisting the temptation to hold on to your pre planned agenda and your full set of objectives and timeline as you planned. Because in that shift and in that change of plan, in the midst of that change and new season, there is a new group of people, a new way of behaving in new environments that often God is moving us into and wants us to be willing to move into with Him as He prompts us into it so that we can actually experience life that's a fulfilling one, not just based on our own personal, selfish goals or ambitions that might be good or even sound good, but don't correspond with the season we're in. And I recognize on two levels, at least, that what I'm saying isn't comfortable. It isn't comfortable for me. I'm a doer. I'm a commander. I execute. I've built for a long period of time my identity around being faithful, around being an asset to the world where I'm called to function, where I have responsibility and influence. And I also know that for many, hearing this from me as a man could feel problematic because men aren't always often given the room to voice this kind of feeling or this perspective. Everyone knows we feel it. Everyone knows that we have them, but very few people want to hear them. And so as men, we end up in a cycle of enduring the experiences rather than recognizing that we have a duty ourselves to embrace the season we're in, not just hold on to the status quo or people's expressed desires or expectations of us. I know that it's a challenge because when a man openly communicates his feelings about things like this, that assumptions about his value, his work ethic, even his identity come to question. But here are the facts. The decisions we make today based on the season we're in, they need to honor the needs of that season. If in fact seasons change, if in fact winter is not summer, then I need to honor the reality that in summer, I don't wear a long winter wool coat and thick snow boots. I have to dress for the season I'm in. Psalms 1:3 tells us that a man, a blessed man, a person who is favored as a result of the upright decisions they make that align with what God wants for them. And that person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which does this, which yields fruit in its season, and whose leaves don't wither, and who is able to prosper in whatever they do. We have to allow ourselves, especially as men, to reject the element of our humanity that for too long has married us to the idea that we have to perform and perform and perform some more just so everyone else's expectations about us are met while we continue to fall apart because we're resisting the season that's calling us to live differently, to relate differently, to embrace another element of our values differently, to embrace and operate and move forward on our vision differently. And that rejection of that change in season creates a heightened level of inner turmoil and dissatisfaction that will have a ripple effect on other people around us because we're not honoring it. Matthew 6:34 says, "Don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself." Each day has trouble of its own. Simply put, the season you're in right now requires you to make adjustments for that season. If you over obsess about what things are going to be tomorrow as a result of your submission to the season you are in at this current time, you're still not lining up to the season. Because oftentimes your anxiety about tomorrow is connected to an old paradigm, is connected to things that were once important and used to be priority one, but now over time have become priority 3 or 4 or 5. And so new seasons require a new set of lenses. So what do I want us to do about this? How can we let the slowdown happen without letting it get us down? Well, the first thing we should do is unclench our fists. Unclench your fist. Take a look at what you've been holding on to, rather tightly because you've been afraid to lose it. You've been afraid of a loss of time. You've been afraid of a loss of progress. You've been afraid of a loss of status. Tell me, has that tightened grip produced any of the results you hoped for? Or has it only created more frustration? Ask yourself, what season am I in? Am I resisting the adjustments to time, to values, to attention that my current reality is demanding of me simply because it isn't my preference? Even though the evidence all around me is saying that I need to adjust my priorities right now to what is authentically the season of my life, the weather of my life that is happening right now, you need to know what season you're in and you need to be able to identify it and then lean into it. I'd also challenge you to open your hand wider than you initially planned. Oftentimes, we acknowledge a change in perspective, in priorities, and in what we should value, but we don't fully embrace it. Opening our hands to an experience that might be uncomfortable, that might not be our personal preference, but that we know is calling for our attention will help us to adjust to the season a lot better because we'll understand that we are participating actively in the shift, in the change, in the nudge that even God is calling us to embrace and to walk into. Typically, what we focus on getting done today is really a reflection of a list of things that we don't want to burden us tomorrow or the day after. They're a reflection of our wanting to plan ahead, but we often do that for the sake of disregarding the current moment. So embrace the current moment. Open your hand and put yourself in that inconvenient position of being a benefit to someone else or another situation that pulls you out of your plan and into that inconvenient moment that ends up actually replenishing your mind and your heart in ways you didn't anticipate. You know, Fred Rogers in 1969, he testified in front of a Senate committee. You know, Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He wasn't a lobbyist or policy expert. He was just called to testify amongst a hostile group of Senate subcommittee members to defend public television funding. It wasn't a part of his job as a children's television host. He showed up anyway, and he spoke plainly with clear emotion about the emotional world of children. And in a few minutes, he was able to turn a group of skeptical senators who opposed a $20 million appropriation to fund children's public television. He turned their opinions around. And that inconvenient trip for Fred Rogers to Washington, D.C. helped secure the future public broadcasting for children nationwide. television programming that benefited and still benefits generations of children today whose name he never knew. But as a result of him making the sacrifice for that season to give himself in a way that he didn't intend it, yielded and continues to yield results and benefits to generations even now. Aaron Fahrenstein from the Malden Mills textile fire in 1995, after the fire destroyed his textile factory just before Christmas, he could have collected their insurance money and walked away and moved his production overseas. Instead, he kept on his 3,000 employees on full pay and benefits for months while he rebuilt. It was inconvenient. It was financially painful. It didn't guarantee any returns, but it generated an enormous level of customer and employee loyalty and national goodwill. And it's still a subject of conversation in business schools today. Why? Because he was in a season that he didn't plan on, but he was committed to leverage it, not just to benefit himself, but to benefit others. So as you move on today, and as you move on throughout the week, and even this month or this year, don't allow the slowdown to get you down. Unclench your fist. Ask yourself, what season am I in? And lean into it. Open your hand wider than you initially planned. And what feels and may very well feel like it's inconvenient for you, at least for now, know that it has the potential to be far more valuable to you and certainly others in the future. So I hope this was helpful for you. As you embrace this week, as you embrace the slowdown, as you unclench your fist and open your hands, and as you embrace this new season in life so that you can take care and live.